Good evening. Thank you everyone so much for being here this evening. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Allie Ghilarducci. I'm the Senior Executive Director of Communications Community Engagement for Austin ISD. Thank you so much everyone for making it out here this evening. Just a few announcements before we get started. So the restrooms are going to be right out this door to my right, to your left. If you want to use the stairs to get through this way, or the ramps will take you up and around that way. If you didn't grab a water, we do have bottled water right outside the door here. If you get thirsty at some point, you're welcome to grab that. And with that, I'm just going to go ahead and run us through, share with you kind of what the agenda is and what to expect, how we want to spend our 90 minutes together this evening. So we're going to quickly go over some meeting agreements that I think that we can all agree to so that we can have a really healthy and productive discussion. Our superintendent is going to start us off with some remarks just to kind of share about where we're at in our thought process. And then we're going to go to Q&A. We do have a number of questions that kind of came up several times in either in our survey responses or one-on-one conversations that we've had. I know we had a trustee, for example, that kind of gathered some questions. So we pre-populated some of those FAQs that we can answer right away, and we can kind of alternate between some of those pre-submitted questions and folks in person who want to ask their questions. And then we'll talk about next steps. But the vast majority of the time is really going to just be open dialogue for us to make sure that you all are able to have a space to kind of share anything that maybe you think that we haven't already considered, and for us to share with you our data and kind of thought process behind where we're at. So these are just our meeting agreements. We want to ask that we respect all voices. What that's going to look like is allowing one person to speak at a time. So we have 2 mics. We will pass one around when it's your turn. We're going to ask that if someone has the mic, we allow them to have their comments and not interrupt or interject. We want to use inclusive language. So speaking in ways that are welcoming to all members of our community, just being mindful of that. And where possible, avoiding jargon or acronyms. We can be bad at that ourselves, but just to make sure we have shared understanding. We don't always have the same vocabularies. We want to engage in healthy dialogue, so it's obviously okay to disagree, but we're going to do so with respect and without personal attacks. And we're going to do our best to honor time limits. We scheduled about 90 minutes for this, so we want to do our best to be able to wrap up on time so that our campus staff, interpreters, and all those folks can get done and everyone get home on time on a school night. So here's the objectives that we've established for this meeting. We have a summary that we'd like to share with y'all, and we can spend some of the meeting time talking about it if we want, or you might have seen there were some paper copies when you came in, as well as a QR code, and I'm going to go ahead and put that QR code back up again. We created a summary of the engagement so you can see kind of what groups we've talked to, who we've been going around trying to gather input from, and then what were the common themes, what were common ideas, concerns. And so we have that information for you to either peruse on your own time, or we can talk about it a little bit here. And then we want to, as I shared, explain kind of what's the criteria, the data, or other considerations that are guiding the district's decision-making around this. And then, like we said, it provides a space for final questions, clarifications, and perspectives before making a final decision. I know that we were aiming to try and make a decision as early as possible in this new year, but we also know that this is a generational decision, and we want to make sure we get it right, so we wanted to have this one last opportunity to get in front of y'all and kind of talk to you before we make a final decision. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our superintendent, Matthias Segura, for a few remarks.
Just keep going. So I appreciate all of y'all taking time out this evening to come and have a conversation. You know, for those of you that know me, I hope that you know that, like, this is what you want, right? You want engagement, you want to have conversations, you want to understand all the different dynamics and then use that input to make the best decision possible. That is how I operate. I hope that you see that as part of this process. I aim to make adjustments where I can, but every time I am making a decision, I want you to know that I'm trying to do it in a way that puts Austin ISD and all of our students in the best position to be successful, not just today, not just in 5 years, but for decades to come. You will hear me often say that we are in the forever business, like we are. We've been around for 145 years. We're going to be here for a very long time. And this is one of those forever decisions. So it should not be taken lightly. And I very much appreciate y'all being here to engage in this conversation because it does matter. I don't want anybody to leave here thinking that, oh, he's already made his decision. I have certain feelings. I have certain thoughts. But I hope that, through this dialogue, you'll see that we will make adjustments, we will refine, and ultimately try to get to a place where we may not all be happy, but at least we'll understand how we got there. And to me, that's a success in some ways. And then two, just acknowledging that there's going to be frustration one way or the other. And that is just what happens when you go through these types of conversations. And so talking specifically about Oak Springs and Blackshear, I want to talk about how it came about. Because you all have heard about it either on the dais or from me in various conversations. Like, we made a decision that Oak Springs was going to have to move in an effort to, A, identify empty seats within an area, but more importantly, address a response to the turnaround work that is required by the Texas Education Agency. And so in the last 18 months, we spent time trying to find solutions that did those things, right? And we arrived at an initial recommendation that considered Oak Springs wholly moving into Blackshear, right? And I want to be really clear, there are incredible things happening at both schools, right? And the outcomes and the ratings, much of that was brought about by things that were outside of our control and things that occurred in the past. That's just the honest truth. Now, we have to own the present and make decisions to move forward, and we arrived at that recommendation, which ultimately was approved by the board. I also want to be really, really clear that the board has certain decisions that they make, and there are certain things that they do not decide on. And there's been questions that have come to me about, Matthias, like, why isn't this a board decision? Well, it's an administrative decision because the board's decision is in boundary changes. That is their decision, and they've made that decision by way of the board vote on November 20th. And so the location of the school within that boundary is an administrative decision. And we have history in Austin ISD of the superintendent, my role, making that decision. Right? It happens in swing spaces, it happens in moves, it happened many, many times. And so there is not likely, unless for some reason the board decides, which I think is unlikely, to have this come up, it would be atypical and not something that is within the governance role of the board currently. So that's why it wasn't built that way. So in case you're asking why isn't the board seeing this, they've already made the decision. Combine the boundaries. The decision of where the school goes within those boundaries is an administrative decision. In the conversations we had with community, and I can think very specifically of a meeting that we had with Reverend Lands and the broader community, there was an idea about, hey, would you consider having the combined school go back to Oak Springs? That's how it came about. And the reason at that time for the consideration was these investments in facilities, these investments in East Austin have not been there in the past. Look at the last 145 years. How many times have you seen investments of that nature be brought into Austin ISD in East Austin? Very seldom. In 2022, we made a decision as a community, and you all, I think, supported it, I'm sure most of y'all did, to invest in Oak Springs, right, which was historically underserved student population in a school that just needed a lot of love and support. I want to be really clear. At that time, we had no idea that we'd be going through this consolidation process in this way. I get asked that all the time. Matthias, how did you not know this? 2022 was the bond, but the planning was 2018, 2019. What happened after 2022? State legislature in 23, no additional funding to schools. 2025, no additional funding to schools. So all of that, coupled with the additional pressures in the state and the federal government, just exacerbated this issue that we had to address. So I just want you to know, we did not anticipate the magnitude of what we're dealing with now just 5 or 6 years ago. It has gotten that bad, and it is that hard. So back to the question, Oak Springs. Could we look at moving the students back to Oak Springs? Because we'd already started the project. And the answer is, yes, we could. But I would need to go through a process, get feedback from the community, figure out what we could restart and when, and what it would look like if we were going to go down this path. And so I was very honest with the community, I was honest with our board that I was going to take time to get it done, and that's where we are now. So I have to make a decision here in the next month, or I risk the delay of not having Oak Springs operate that full year. It'd be one whole year. And here's the reason why. You can't start a school mid-year. Not in the middle of a semester. You have to go at the end of the semester or at the beginning of the new year. So months delay means a whole year delay, right? The other thing I want to reinforce is what I think about a lot is when would another investment come along? If we forego the Oak Springs investment, which again, we may do that, but if we forego it, we don't have enough money to fully modernize Blackshear. That's the honest truth. We look at the data, we look at the cost, and here's the other thing. If we were going to fully modernize it, it would require more funds. That would require funds coming from somewhere else. Where would that somewhere else be? Well, it'd likely have to be a future bond, right? Because we're not talking about $5 or $10 million. We're talking about 20, 30, 40 million dollars. Because the time that it would take to get there and build it, design it, right? Those years add cost, right? Escalation. We measure it, and I just want to be really honest that it's not an apples to apples comparison because time is the factor. And so when I think about a sure thing now, which is perhaps Oak Springs, versus something that is unsure in the future, we'd have to look at a 2028 bond or a 2030 bond, then invest, design, construct, and build. Now, I want to be really honest, like we are at a point right now where either one of these can work. But I want to be really, really clear, the latter of building a new Blackshear or fully modernized Blackshear is not necessarily as probable without lots of other things happening, right? There's not enough money in Oak Springs to rebuild Blackshear. The other thing that I get asked a lot, just I want to hit it on and be really clear is, what is the benefit of a new building, right? Because we have incredible schools and that are doing incredible things, and sometimes they're in portables. And I ask myself, these things are occurring in spite of the facilities. Well, one of the things we know is you think about the 7 conditions for student success, like having a high-functioning, safe, secure building, right? One that meets the needs of the students and how we learn now versus how we learned 40 years ago is a benefit. Now, we can argue about if that's a big benefit or a little benefit, but it is proven. There is research behind it. The other thing is, when it comes to teacher retention, long-term, again, we're talking 5, 10, 20 years from now, having a facility that meets our teacher needs is going to put us in a better position long-term. So that is what I am weighing. Now, I've answered the questions, and I have data on, the developments in the area and how that was incorporated into the plan. Yes, they were incorporated. We can talk about the number of students that reside in the community. We have those numbers. Yes, they can fit. The question becomes, well, Matthias, if you combine the enrollment numbers, they're not going to fit. Well, the answer is we're not moving in, if that was the way that we would go, into Oak Springs for a couple years, which means the incoming transfer students to kindergarten, right, for 2 years would be managed from an enrollment perspective to ensure that we have the space. But right now, from a resides, we fit. The reason that it doesn't fit is because the number of transfers that transfer into Blackshear. And so I just want you to know, there are lots of things that we can do to make this work if we want it to work. I see you shaking your head, but we can talk about the details. But at the end of the day, that's what I'm thinking through, and we can argue the points, and we can go back and forth, but those are the things that we're trying to consider before we come to a final decision. And that is honestly where we're at. So I also want to create space to answer any questions. This time is your time. One thing that comes up also, just because I know it may come up, is when students move, what does the research say around student movement and how does that impact student outcomes? Well, what I'll tell you is that in Austin ISD, there are lots and lots of examples of us making moves and having our students actually improve academically or have no impact at all. Now, there are some outliers, but the ones that were outliers are because we didn't plan, where it happened very, very quickly. Like T.A. Brown a couple years ago, we had to shut it down within really a 48-hour notice because the building was structurally not sound, right? And that move created disruption. But we look at schools right now in our school system that have moved in the last couple years and their outcomes have actually increased. Yeah, I know you're shaking your head. Look at Langford. They went from an F to a D to a C in portables. There are lots of examples of this because we see it with school movement, we see it with swing space solutions, and what I'm saying is that should be a concern. But what I would say is if we plan together, we can really, really ensure that our students are protected and supported, and it's a successful transition. That shouldn't be a limiting factor, especially when it's 2.5, almost 3 years out from when we actually have to implement. As far as design of Oak Springs, if we were able to get to that decision, if that's the way we end up going, yes, the building is designed, but it doesn't mean that there is an opportunity to bring in other elements from the Blackshear community or re-envision what it is. Now, some of the walls, the units themselves, as far as the building blocks, those are the set, but they would be set in either case, right? We have education specifications. So when it comes to branding, when it comes to name, when it comes to color, when it comes to how spaces are used, you know, Blackshear's fine arts program is incredible. So what spaces in that new building would need to be modified to accept the program? We can do all that, and we have time to do it. But I just wanted to start off there because you probably have other questions, and I don't want to take more time here just kind of going one way. I want to be responsive to your questions. But I wanted to start there so you knew precisely what I was navigating while navigating everything else to try to get to a solution that works, I hope, best for the combined community.
Thank you,
I will
Matthias.
pause there. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and open it up to Q&A. And I think the first, so there was some questions submitted, like I shared. The first one, I think you've mostly covered, was what are the criteria for deciding whether to complete Oak Springs campus and move the consolidated Blackshear community there? I think you talked somewhat about that. So I'm not going to go into that one just now, but if there are more, if you want more clarifying information about any of the things that he shared, we do have backup slides and we'll get these posted on the website. What I'm going to start with is I want to try to attempt to go, if possible, back and forth between folks who consider themselves maybe representatives of Oak Springs, folks who consider themselves representatives of Blackshear, and then folks who maybe feel like they represent the whole area. And so just because I think that from looking at the sign-in sheet, it looked like we had a few more Blackshear folks here, I'm going to go ahead and invite anyone who wants to speak and open questions, remarks, whatever, from Oak Springs to start out. Is there anyone from Oak that would like to start with Oak Springs? Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to ask Pastor McClendon to come on down with me. I have, yes, I would. My name is Sherwin Patton. I'm supporting the community of Oak Springs, and I'm supporting the community of Blackshear because we don't separate East Austin community. We represent East Austin. And so I have a letter here from Pastor Mays, who is the pastor of Mount Sinai Baptist Church, and then he's also the moderator for the St. John Association. And so this letter says, Dear Superintendent Segura, I want to share my input concerning Oak Springs and Blackshear Elementary Schools. 4 of our 5 children attended and graduated from Austin schools. I cannot physically be present this evening because my ministerial duties require my attendance elsewhere. However, I would that all of you in leadership in Austin Independent School District would consider well the impact that community schools have upon any people. We need good and effective schools which our students might attend with less of a hardship of great distance, time, and the greater expense of travel and transportation. The investment in public schools will pay good dividends now and into the future. I recommend that you lead the district to complete the project of Oak Springs and rehabilitate Blackshear to serve the coming generations. As pastor of the Mount Sinai Missionary Baptist Church of Austin and moderator of the St. John Regular Baptist District Association, whose membership includes some 88 churches in this region, I pray for your best determinations to serve all the constituents of Austin Independent School District, and I remain your servant in Christ's name. I know that was not a question, but that was what I was asked to read. And so the next letter that I'm going to read before I turn this over to Pastor McClendon is from Dream Together 2030. Dream Together 2030 is a citywide and regional movement grounded in a simple but demanding vision to build a beloved community by the year 2030, where unity replaces division, justice replaces inequity, and shared responsibility replaces abandonment. We believe this work begins now, not in rhetoric, but in decisions, especially those that shape the lives of children. The future of Oak Springs and Blackshear Elementary Schools presents such a decision. Rewrite and unify support of completing the new state-of-the-art Oak Springs Elementary School at its current site and repurposing the historic Blackshear Elementary campus as an early quality education and enrichment center. This course of action reflects not only sound educational planning, but moral clarity, historical awareness, and a commitment to unity rather than displacement. Oak Springs sits in a community that has endured prolonged underinvestment, disruption, and delay. Construction has already begun. To leave this project unfinished would deepen inequity and erode trust. Completing Oak Springs affirms that children in East Austin and children across Austin deserve access to modern, fully equipped neighborhood schools that remove barriers to learning rather than create new ones. At the same time, Blackshear Elementary is more than a campus. Founded in 1891, it stands as a living witness to resilience, culture, and generational perseverance. Preservation does not mean freezing history in place. Repurposing Blackshear as an early childhood education and enrichment center honors its legacy while responding to present needs, creating a walkable, community-centered pathway of learning that strengthens families and prepares children for lifelong success. Dream Together 2030 affirms that our city's progress must be measured not by growth alone, but rather our collective decisions that advance unity, dignity, and shared opportunities. So we acknowledge the history of Blackshear. We also acknowledge that there has been fractured trust between institutions and communities. Yes, moments like this offer the possibility of repair by choosing restoration over rupture and vision over expediency. So this is not solely an East Austin issue, it is a reflection of who we are becoming as a city and region. The choices made here will signal whether Austin is prepared to live into its professed values and move toward a beloved community by 2030. And we respectfully urge you to complete the Oak Springs campus and reimagine Blackshear in a way that honors history, reserves the history, and serves children and strengthens trust. Such leadership would stand as a tangible expression of unity in action, and we thank you for your service, your deliberation, and your commitment to the future of our children. We resolve and hope Dream Together 2030, a call for unity by 2030, representing faith leaders, educators, community organizations, families, and civic partners across the Austin region. Thank you.
My name is Billy McClendon, and I'm the senior pastor of the St. James Church here in the city, and I concur, and I'm a part of the St. John Regular Baptist Association. I've been in Austin now 32 years, and I'm a product of education. I come from East Texas, Central East Texas, West Louisiana, and I grew up in a time where we were segregated, but I got a good education. And I concur 100% with the letter from our moderator and those. When it comes to Oak Springs and Blackshear, we need to be very sensitive to the needs of those communities. And I cannot employ enough that should be considered. Anytime that a child is not educated. This little child right here has a bright future if he gets a good education. And I think that should be, and thank you guys for what you're trying to do, but what's been read about Oak Springs and Blackshear should be considered. Epictetus said, men are not disturbed not by things, but the view in which they take of them. And anytime an education institution in a predominantly black or minority community is dealt with, it creates all kinds of flags. And in America, we still have the greatest country in the history of the world. But again, education have been. I come from a rural area, but I got a good education. And that should be paramount. Michelle Alexander, her book, The New Jim Crow, talks about what education does. So I thank you guys. I concur that Blackshear should be modernized and Oak Springs should be completed so that the kids will not have any kind of barriers to having a good education. And thank you for your time, and thank you. Feel like
You're okay? Sure. We can get to you next. Did we have, I know that someone from the Blackshear PTA wanted to address the group. Would you like to go next? Okay.
Oh, yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Neil. I have a daughter here at Keeling and a son who is still at Blackshear. So we've been at Blackshear a while and got a little bit more to go. I feel like in these meetings, when we talk about consolidation, the room can feel very heavy, especially at this point when it's open up to Q&A. There's the air feels very thick at times. There's lots of emotion. It's good. You have families that really love their respective campuses. That's part of it. Maybe fear of maybe it's not going to go the way I want. There's that element too. Maybe anxiousness about what that kind of plays on the fear. What's it going to be like in the future if it goes this other way? So I just want to say, for now, just deep breath, relax. It's going to be okay. No matter how this goes, we're all going to be fine. I also wish to welcome our new families to Oak Springs. We're looking very much looking forward to that in August. I think you're going to love your new Blackshear campus. No matter how this goes, that's going to be your home for at least a little while. I say your campus because if you're at Oak Springs, it's going to be as much yours as it is anyone else's. So that's very important. There are many things I love about the campus. Tonight, what you're going to hear is that you'll hear me advocating to keep Blackshear open as an elementary school, sort of permanently, indefinitely. You'll hear others advocating the same. Really important for me, for everyone to realize that does not mean we're advocating against a new building at Oak Springs. That's a false choice as I see it. Some may say, oh, but the parameters of the situation. No, I didn't create those parameters. I did not erect them. Those came from the state, from the district. We have ideas. We've brainstormed about other possibilities. We just want to be invited to the table to discuss those, maybe some outside-the-box things. I know, Matthias, you're smart, creative, handsome, and sucking up now. We can come up with some ideas together that maybe keep both of these campuses open, because some of us on the Blackshear side are passionate about that as well. Sherwin and I are new friends. We spoke this morning and have a deeper appreciation for some things that he explained to me, some good historical context. And I did not want to speak after Sherwin. I was hoping to go first because he has a lot of charisma, but this is how it happened. Yeah, that's all I have to say. I don't have a specific question. There's some folks that are more articulate than I will that will ask you these questions. I'll let them take over from here. Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Thank you. I'm not one of those folks that's more articulate, so I don't want to follow Sherwin either. My name's Scott Flack. I've been in Austin not near as long as many of you, especially folks that have been here for generations. I got here in the mid-'90s. I have a real estate business. Got connected to Sherwin about a decade ago and started investing time and some capital and relationship resources with Life Anew, with Dr. Darrell Horton and others. So I've had a lot of proximity to Oak Springs and to Booker T across the street. Understand the relationship that's very important between those two assets. And I wanted to, I need to read a letter from a friend But before I do, I heard generational investment, the front end from my friend here, and I believe that that's true. So I'm gonna go with the facts of what I heard the superintendent say. If both schools aren't staying open, we deserve a generational investment. And there's one place where that's started to happen, got stopped. I think we're all frustrated with that, but has the opportunity to get started again. I agree with my friend who just spoke that short term, it's going to be a little chaotic. We're going to be crammed into, it sounds like one building. It's going to be Blackshear. I believe that if this young man who just turned 1 gets into kindergarten, it ought to be in a proper school that this community deserves, a school for the future, a generational investment. And the only way that that 1-year-old is in a kindergarten that we can all be proud of is if we're bold and we make a decision to go vertical with something incredibly important and different and generational at Oak Springs. So I'm going to read a letter from my friend Dr. Daryl Horton. It is penned to Superintendent Segura, so I'll kind of face you.
Funny, I haven't read any of these letters.
Yeah.
So, no.
He couldn't be here either, but this one's a little shorter than a couple of sure ones. So, dear Superintendent Segura, thank you and the Austin Independent School District leadership team for an extended opportunity to receive community input regarding Oak Springs and Blackshear Elementary Schools. I write this letter as I am unable to attend in person due to a previously scheduled engagement. As a native Austinite, a graduate of AISD, and pastor of Mount Zion Baptist Church in historic East Austin, I ask that you make an intentional and impactful investment in the lives of children and families in East Austin. I echo the heartfelt sentiments and wisdom of many in our community, and I ask that you resume and complete the construction at Oak Springs Elementary School and consolidate the students, staff, and programs of Blackshear Elementary at the current Oak Springs campus. This move will provide another much-needed modern campus for students in the East Austin community. In an effort to preserve the 135-year legacy and its cultural and historical significance, we ask that you invest in the necessary structural updates to Blackshear Elementary and repurpose that campus as an early childhood education programming center. This decision could provide a historic opportunity for our children who could experience academic fulfillment right here in our community, within walking distance of their homes, from Blackshear to Houston-Tilliston University. We recognize you have many difficult decisions to make. You are aware of the hurt and harm perpetuated for decades. Here is an opportunity for healing and restoration of trust. We ask that you have the faith and courage to make this life-changing investment, generational, in our children and in our community. Thank you again for your time and your sincere consideration. The Honorable Reverend Daryl Horton.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other folks who want to raise their hand? Maybe if you're wanting to talk, I probably can only remember about 3 hands at a time, but if the next folks that are interested, do we have anyone either from Blackshear or, okay, I'm going to go with you next. Anyone from Oak Springs?
Oh.
You want to go next? Okay, so I'll go to the lady back there, to y'all, and then to that gentleman back there. All right, come on in. Or I'm happy to come to you. Oh, the students are going to speak. Okay. Yeah.
Can you explain, so the repurposing of Blackshear as an early childhood development center, the CDC, like of daycare, infants to 3-ish, right? Is that what we're talking about? Like, because we're trying not to use jargon, right? So we want to call it what it is, right?
Well, so these are ideas that have been brought to us.
Sure.
Right. So you're asking me to respond back. That's
to
my
an idea, right? So it seems like an idea that's being floated right now is repurposing Blackshear, but you've also just told us it's too expensive to continue using.
Modernize. Those are different things. Yeah. So I'll elaborate on it.
So is that really a choice to continue both projects?
So yes, and here's the reason why. They're 2 separate things. I'm going to be really, really clear. These are 2 separate things. A modernized facility can only be paid for using bond proceeds. The 2022 bond program, which was a historic investment in East Austin, is what's funding Oak Springs, right? So that has to go to a capital investment for infrastructure, and that's what it's allocated for. When you look at a historic building like Blackshear, One of the things that you quickly realize, and I think most people here know, is that you're limited in what you can do, right? The footprint is fixed. The facade is fixed. You know, there are things that we can do with the interior, but it's never going to be able to be constructed in a way that meets the education specifications and our security specifications. It's just not possible. But what is possible is a repurposing for a different use. And that is a different type of threshold. So an example of this occurring right now, Pease Elementary School, right? Pease Elementary School was closed in 2019, right? Pease has been reconfigured in a partnership with United Way to be an early childhood center. That has already been done, and we've paid for it using a grant through Congressman Doggett's office. And so in that way, we can get a partner. The funds come from outside AISD, right? United Way came in and agreed to the partnership. We worked with Congressman Doggett to allocate the funds. We made the necessary improvements, but those are very, very different standards than an actual school. So the cost is very, very different.
So are you factoring that in when you're making this decision right now?
As far as,
That's only hypothetical.
I would say that is less hypothetical than actually pursuing a modernized project for Blackshear, for sure. Because the reality is I can execute that plan and that project fairly quickly because it's not a large lift. I don't have to go to voters for additional funds, right? There are so many needs when it comes to early childhood development centers in Austin. Like the partnerships are there. What they don't have are spaces, and what we don't have are funds to improve those spaces, but that's where philanthropy and partnerships with congressmen come in. So, and I want to be really, really clear, like our intent is to preserve Blackshear. Like I have acknowledged that from the beginning, right? This building, the history there, the legacy of Blackshear is something that is going to be retained in Austin ISD. What we have to figure out as a community is what makes the most sense and also meets a need, right? It shouldn't be repurposed into something that doesn't meet an educational need. It really shouldn't. So that is why that idea came up. I know I can do it. It's not, I would say, abstract because I've done it already. And I work with Travis County, the city of Austin all the time trying to figure out ways to get this working where they don't have our facilities. And that's what we have. So is that helpful? A little bit? Different buckets of money and there are different requirements to access each funds. Yeah.
Next, we're going to come up here.
Do you want me to go up there or?
Wherever you want.
Okay.
What's his name? Isaiah. So cute.
Hello, my name is Heather Cavazos. I'm a parent at Oak Springs Elementary School. I currently have 2 children there, and they also had my 2 oldest. If this decision is truly about children and learning, then completing a new modernized building at the current Oak Springs site is the only response. AISD has said students need spaces that support innovative learning in today's technological age. East Austin children deserve that same investment. Thank you. Serena?
Hello, my name is Bella Turner. I go to Oak Springs Elementary. If this is really about us, then we need a school that is safe, literally, and made for learning. We want classrooms that help us focus in space where we can explore, create, and grow. Finish the new Oak Springs building would show that our education matters just as much as any student in this district.
Hello, my name is Serenity. I am a student from Oak Springs Elementary. If this is really about us, then please build a school that match the world we are growing up in. We are learning with technology, teamwork, and creativity. A new school at Oak Springs would give us the tools we need to succeed in middle school, high school, college, and whatever comes next.
Hello, my name is Bella. I attend Oak Springs Elementary. If this is really about us, then please listen to our voices too. We want a school where we feel excited to learn every day. A modern Oak Springs school would help our teachers teach better and help.
Great job.
Hello, my name is Lola. I am proud to be a student at Oak Springs Elementary. If this is really about us, then the answer is simple. We need a new school built for learning today, not the past. Completing the Oak Springs building will help students now and students who come after us. Please choose a future that supports our learning, our growth, and our dreams.
Great job.
And these are other students at Oak Springs.
My name is Yasmin.
My name is Zeke.
My name's Adam.
Great job, y'all.
My name is Raneem.
Way to go, y'all. You're brave. Woohoo! There is no way I'd be standing in front of this many people at your age. You guys are really amazing, especially not reading. No way. The gentleman back there.
Thank you. Hey, everybody. Thank you, thank you. I promise. I have one letter to read, and then I'll be short-winded. But I'm sorry, I'm Mike Hargis from Austin, Texas, born and raised. Yeah. Nice to meet you officially, my brother. But this is from Pastor Galen Clark, Greater Mount Zion. I wanted to share this on behalf of him. But dear Superintendent Segura and members of AISD Board, I write this letter as I am unable to attend the upcoming board meeting in person. I serve as the lead pastor of Greater Mount Zion in East Austin, and I want to express my strong, passionate support for completing a new state-of-the-art elementary school at the current Oak Springs Elementary site and consolidating Oak Springs and Blackshear students at the campus. East Austin's children and families deserve access to a modern, fully equipped learning environment. Construction at Oak Springs began and remains an unfinished construction zone. Completing this project would represent a critical investment in the future for our students and a tangible sign of commitment to the educational equity in our community. Early childhood education is a foundational to the long-term opportunity, and this new campus would help ensure that the children in East Austin have the resources they need to thrive. At the same time, I strongly support preserving Blackshear Elementary because it's a deep historical and cultural significance. Founded in 1891 to provide education for African American children, named for educator Edward L. Blackshear, the school represents more than 135 years of community legacy. From its beginnings as one-room school to its current role as a fine arts academy, Blackshear has mirrored the evolution of education in East Austin. Preserving this historic campus as an early childhood education center would honor its legacy while meeting a vital present-day need. This decision is an opportunity to stand united for our children, our neighbors, and the future of East Austin. I respectfully urge you to complete the Oak Springs campus and repurpose Blackshear in a way that both advances educational excellence and preserves community history. Thank you for your time and thoughtful consideration. Sincerely, Pastor Galen Clark, lead pastor, Greater Mount Zion Church. Thank you. Now, I would like to say something real quick. I promise I'll be brief, but it was hard to follow up behind our youth, and we all have to remember that's our future. Those are the people that's gonna take care of us one day. I'm still young, but I want, these young women and children over here, these young men, to take care of us one day. We have to come together. We have to protect our children. We have to protect our future. They are our future. So please just consider this, because being from here, born and raised, knowing where I used to be and where I am at now in life, we have to stick together, because it will cause a lot of long-term trauma and harm for our community decades to come. And we don't want that. We don't want that at all. And it's all about unity. So thank you, and please remember, put our children first. They need us, and we need them too.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to take 3 more folks. I saw your hand come up first. Do you have a connection to either school in particular or just community in general? General, okay, so was that? And then I saw a hand over here, your school connection? Blackshear. And then do I have one more Oak that wants to speak from Oak Springs? You? And then Ms. Brad, I'm going to go forward to Ms. Bradley after that, all right? And if you'll introduce yourself.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Chaz Moore with a nonprofit here in town. I'm here because I was invited, and we met before. So the question I'm finna ask is not for you personally, but you sit in a seat that comes with a lot of baggage. And you most definitely are part of a institution that has a whole lot of baggage. So I don't want you to take it personal, but this is my question. And I'm not gonna tell you who I was invited here by, because I don't want them to get no bad rap. But it's hard for me to come to these type of meetings because I'm not born and raised in Austin. I've been here 20 years. Ever since I had the adult choice to move to Austin, right? Since I was 18, I've been here. I can't decide when my parents conceived me. But for the 20 years I've been here, and as an organizer and activist, I've seen black folks, Mexicans, Latinos, other people of color, and poor white to do good folks, because there's some poor white people that are terrible, constantly come out and beg and plead these different systems and institutions to do the right thing. It didn't start with my organization. It didn't start with the Black Citizens Task Force, but they were a big part of it. The LULACs, the NAACPs, the Urban Leagues. And what I've seen in my 20 years of being in Austin, but also because I can read, and I know the history, and I've listened to the oral history of black and brown folks, mainly our elders that have told me how much this city has taken from black and brown folks. Just take, like literally. And in that process of taking, 6th Street used to be all black, brown, and people of color. Took. East Side used to be all black and brown. Took. And all these things, right? And in that process of taking, colonialism, for the words of people that know, black and brown people have had to endure almost a humiliation of begging for human decency and to see us as human in the process of this taking. Black and brown folks and poor white to do good folks have had to beg the city of Austin and city of Austin institutions in the process of them taking the things from these working class people to just treat me as a human. Just treat me as you would a decent neighbor. And they took it anyway. My question with that in mind is, as these kids get up, as that brother got up, and as these, to do good pastors, bless their heart, reading you these letters full of passion and hope, what hope, if you will, or if you can, better question, what what would you say to a group of people that have no reason to trust anything that AISD is about to say, right? Like, because we've seen this process with everything from Metro, Cap Metro, any bond issue that's on the ballot. Do this and we'll deliver on this, and then the delivery never comes through. And I've gone on record and said, I think AISD is the most violent institution in the city of Austin compared to the Austin Police Department, based on how they have treated and left behind black and brown and poor folks over the past 20, 30 years. And again, that's not you. It's just it's a neglect of black and brown families and students that have gone through the AISD system. So again, not personal, but like you represent a seat that have called these meetings before. People come out and they bare their soul and their wisdom and all the things, and then the things they're asking for still don't happen. So like, what's I guess like what's the
So when did you come in the beginning or a little after we started?
No, I heard you, but
no, just to be clear, like so. Austin ISD has been around, again, 145 years. And without a doubt, like this organization has not done what it should have done for black and brown people. I'm a product of Austin ISD. I'm brown. My parents lived in East Austin. I grew up in South Austin. And what you find us doing now, I can't speak for 5, 10 years ago. I was here, but I wasn't here. I wasn't in the seat until 2.5, 3 years ago. But I hope that what you've seen from us in this iteration of the administration and our board is that we are very, very clear that we are going to resource our students that need the most, right? Period, full stop. We disaggregate data, right? We know that students who look like you and I do not do well in Austin ISD, but yet we're a higher performing school district. So it's in the details. So we as an organization over the last 3 years, even prior to that, but certainly in the last 3 years, have been pushing very, very hard. So when you say things, or when people say things like we have done things in a way, at least recently, that is counter to what we've done in the past, I would say that's true. The 2022 bond program, which is funding Oak Springs does not get funded 10 years ago. Doesn't get funded 40 years ago. Doesn't get funded 100 years ago. It got funded in 2022. I led that work. We led that work. And we're executing that work at a high rate and a high level. You can compare us to Cap Metro, City of Austin, Travis County. I promise you no one is building more efficiently or quicker than we are, right? And so for me, you know, what we're trying to do, and yes, what this is exactly what should be happening, is understanding the lived experiences of those in the community. It would be disingenuous for me to make a decision without your voice, without our students' voice, without our families' voices, because that's the definition of like historical inequities. Like, if we're gonna make a decision, you should be at the table. You should be closest to the decision maker. That's what this is. And so I'm telling you, like, as we move forward as an organization, we are desperately trying to turn it on its head, right? And there's a lot of evidence that suggests that we are moving in the right direction. I wanna get this right, and it may not be right, but I'm gonna do everything I can to make it as best as it can be so that when people look back 50 years from now, they knew that what we did was in support of those who have been historically underserved, right? And that's where I'm at. And I'm gonna do that until the board ushers me out. But that's how I think, that's how I operate. And I would say that those who have worked with me know that. But yeah, it hasn't been a long run. So we're like a blink in 145 years. But you know, I feel very confident that if we go down this path, this project will be executed. If we don't go down this path, then we will do whatever else is required by the community. And I will be relentless until it gets done. So there's, I don't know where Allie was. Allie.
I'm right behind you.
Oh.
I know I have this woman in the green, and then the gentleman here, Ms. Bradley, and then I'll get to y'all after that. Yep.
Oh, sorry, Gabe. Hi, I'm a parent of 2 kids at Blackshear Elementary. We're hoping to be with AISD for years into the future. So we have a 1st grader and a 4th grader. And I've learned a lot about the interests of the community through this whole process of consolidation. I followed the meetings, and you all are like celebrities who I watch on the AISD board meetings, so very nice to see you both in person. one thing I've learned is, more about the importance of the new Oak Springs building to the community who's been in East Austin for a very long time. From my perspective as a parent, I prefer to stay at Blackshear because I want my child to have a consistent experience in their education. And I really enjoy the campus. I've learned a lot about East Austin and the history here from being at that campus. So that's, it comes from my personal interest for my kids and also the appreciation I've gained from being at the campus, for the last 5 years. And I like the comments focusing on the kids. I think that that's something that I've really wanted to see as much of as possible in these discussions. And I'm hearing two different things throughout the consolidation process. One, I think a trustee at one point called it kind of a building plan, and it being a great building plan. And I see that. But also I feel like when it comes to the hard decisions that are being made, a lot of it comes down to the TAPs and the state requirements. And there it feels a little bit like playing like whack-a-mole. Like there's not as much foresight and foreplanning there. So my question is, when we're having this consolidation, there's research that shows it takes a couple of years for school communities to really come together and for the kids to get stabilized and the school to be operating well. But at the same time, we're introducing the other move. So we have the schools coming together, we have the TAP, which does have support with it to get the academics where they need to be. But what's really gonna be the support there for the TAP? Like, I don't want my kids to move again, and then that school gets given over to the state. Are we building a new school just to give it to a charter school to run? Are we building a new school to give it to the state to run? I'd really like to know what the support for the Blackshear school staff and leadership is going to be to effectively lead a new campus development. At the same time, we are trying to be successful at a TAP, avoid state takeover, which I don't think, unless there's someone here, this is a meeting, if anybody wants a state takeover, please raise your hand. But I think we're all as a district joined together in that desire to avoid a state takeover. And I'd really like to hear more about how the school and their leadership at Blackshear will be supported in leading the new campus construction while keeping the academics and the support for the children and avoiding that state takeover.
Yeah, no, great question. Thank you. Yeah, and so Jennifer is going to stand up here in a second, who's the assistant superintendent over elementary school leadership, to provide kind of probably more detail than you're going to want, because it's all in the TAPs, but it's also implementation, right? What I want to also acknowledge is you're exactly right? Whenever a principal is having to build a school or design a school, it's like two jobs. And we recognize that, and we have supplemented that in the past. I want to be also very clear that a lot of that lifting actually occurs in the design process, right? Because when the principal is working with a campus architectural team, what they're doing is trying to build consensus to identify like what's going to be built, how it's going to be built, and where it's going to be built, not once the contractor actually takes control and begins to build. So in the period of time that we're entering, if we restart Oak Springs, yes, there will be the need for support and engagement, but not at the same level that you would have had it if we were a year behind where we are now, or a year and a half behind where we are now. Just think about it as like you're building a home. I mean, there's so much detail that goes into the specifics, but then once it's set and they begin to construct, you generally hand off. But we also provide additional supports. We have construction project managers. Many of them are actually principals who actually have delivered modernized facilities. An example, this is Principal Isaac. It's Isaac. I was trying to say his name. Isaac. I always say it wrong because I call him different ways. But anyway, he was the principal at Wooten, and then he went up to construction management, and so he is the support person for the principal who's going through a modernization. And so he is there with the principal's understanding. He's been a principal in our schools, and he is working with school leadership, he's working with construction management and saying, hey, this is what this principal needs. We need to deploy the resources, and we can actually provide those resources using bond proceeds, and that supplements what's coming out of our TAP proceeds. So yes, you're right. There are additional asks of the principal. Where we are, they're not as big as they would be otherwise, and also we have a system in place to provide that support. Now, when it comes to the turnaround plan specifically, which is also part of your question, I mean, I certainly can speak to the different resources that we're allocating. Much of that is being defined as they come together, whether it's instructional coaches or additional allocations in staff. Yeah. 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 So one of the things that we were really intentional about, maybe we could debate this. We were intentional about investing in schools that have been historically underserved, right? Because I've been asked by people, Matthias, why are you building schools that have historically not met accountability or under-enrolled, right? And there are schools that we are building now, right? And we're consolidating into those schools. And so it's counter. If I was only going to invest in schools that are higher performing, or if I was only going to invest in schools that historically didn't have the same challenges, then you would never invest in certain parts of Austin, and that's not what we were going to be. That's not who we are. So we have invested, we made this commitment. But with that commitment means that you're going to have to be very intentional about the plan that you implement, because you are doing it in a community that has been historically underserved with student populations who just need more. Now, I'll tell you, what is happening here, if this is where we agree to go, it is actually the best solution. If you have two schools that are only coming together in the new school, that is not ideal, right? The best solution is when they co-locate together at a transition school, which is what's happening here, and then move back to the new school together, so the school cohort is already built. An example is to be Norman Sims. I see he's shaking his head, but that is what has been most successful. If you bring two schools differently, two different cultures, and these communities had not been built together, that is less successful. And we've done it both ways in Austin, and in my experience, it has been best to bring the school communities together first, and then bring them back together. Yeah. Sure. The county? The school district? Sure, we have all that. I mean, I can share with you all the data. Now, there are multiple things that are putting downward pressure on enrollment. And so I think it is a false narrative to say that any move is the only thing driving enrollment, because we've seen instances where enrollment's increased with a new school. And I've also seen instances where not if you go to a private school or move out of the state, or go to homeschool. I can't track that. And there's also students that come in. But
Sir, I'm gonna go ahead and swing back around to you, because we've
we have all
called
that
on some
information.
folks. So I have this gentleman here who's next, Ms. Bradley, and then Ms. Miller, and then I can come back to you.
Good evening, Honorable Superintendent, everyone here. It's amazing that people come out and care. This is helpful. My name is Bill Wallace, and I get the honor and privilege of being with Tomorrow's Promise Foundation, among some other organizations here in the city. I've had the pleasure of working with you on our State of Black education here in Austin, which we know is not really something to brag about. When I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about, I'm born and raised here in Austin, and I'm thinking about my Aunt Evelyn Kendrick Hargrove, who graduated from Old Anderson High School. And I'm thinking about the displacement of people from their communities in pursuit of education, and that really just didn't work out. And I think about the East Austin that I grew up in, doesn't look the same. I went to Oak Springs Elementary School. I was a dynamic dolphin. Yeah. And I went to junior high school at Dobie Middle School, one of the principals there right now. I hear what you said, and I want to trust the process. But I actually met with Dr. Stephanie Elizalde like every month for like 13 months straight. Me and a coalition of people, we met with her every month. We worked with Dr. Mays, the interim superintendent, during this bond process, right? Where we were promised that this money is 100% going to schools in our Eastern Corridor. We're going to the Eastern Crescent, and we're going to take care of these schools. All the lack of investment that we have seen throughout the years. Because right now, as it stands, Oak Springs looks just the same as it did when I went there in the 1980s. And it hasn't been modernized very much since then. And the same is true for Dobie and Lanier, or Navarro now. The same is true for those schools as well. And all of these schools fit the criteria of this Eastern Crescent that we're talking about. I'm saying that to say that, like, we've been promised. And I do think, I agree with this young man here, that it is a false choice to have to choose between the two, because they have historically been underinvested. And I do share some of the concerns with people about enrollment, because now we're starting to welcome people back into the gentrified Rosewood courts. And you know what that enrollment is going to look like, and the rest of it. It's not lost on us that there's developments right next to Oak Springs. And I fear that if we quit this construction midway, that the next time I pass by there, when I go through my old neighborhood headed to Elm Ridge, or visiting some of my mentees in Booker T, Washington, Terrence, that I'm gonna see the next Starbucks and Lululemon shopping center on that corner. And I fear that, I think that the data is on my side, right? I think that what we've seen throughout my lifetime in East Austin is on my side, that if that construction is halted there, what we'll see is a non-modernized Blackshear Elementary School, overcrowded, and on the verge of being eliminated, like this young lady here talked about, that we'll have the state take over or something. In that corner where we had an opportunity to modernize education for our kids will be left to Lululemon and Starbucks or whatever. So I urge you to continue this construction while we have it, and keep that promise to all the people who went out and knocked on doors, handed out flyers, held listening sessions, to tell their constituents, to tell their neighbors, like me, to tell our neighbors to vote for that bond that got approved, that we just keep our promise, to keep our promise on there. Because that's what happened. I know Dr. Mays is gone, and Oscar Adams. I know all these people that are gone, that Katrina Bailey and all of them, they're all gone now. I get it. But I remember the promises that was made. And I'm asking you, your fellow Austinite, to keep that promise. That's what I'm asking.
Appreciate that. So I'm gonna do a brief response. So they were here for a very short period of time, right? Dr. Elizalde and Dr. Mays. The 2020, but I was the COO in that time. I led the development of the bond program as far as investment, location. That was my role. That was what I did for years. I mean, Cheryl Bradley knows. And this is something we can agree on. I was actually here. I did this stuff. But this is work that I led. It was important for me that we invested in a way that we had not before. I want to see investments in East Austin, and I know that it seems like it's been delayed as far as other infrastructure. We've been moving. 2022 bond program passes. You sell the bonds in early 2023. You begin the design process. Takes you 18 months to construct an elementary school. We delivered Harris and Wooten 3 weeks ago. In this summer, we have, Allison coming up. We have Pecan Springs coming up. These are all East Austin schools. Right? We have Eastside Early College High School about to deliver. We got Burnett Middle School about to deliver. These are hundreds of millions of dollars in East Austin. All that is rolling. And yes, I believe sincerely that we need to invest because you only get once, maybe twice in a generation to actually invest in this scale. It doesn't happen often. I don't know if we'll pass through the bond. I don't know what superintendent's going to be here that's going to have the grit to go through it, right? That's the honest truth. We went through it. I want to do the right thing. I want to take the input and do the best that I can. I hear you. We're trying to do it differently. And, at the end of the day, I hope we arrive at a solution that works for everybody. But I do not want a Starbucks or a Lululemon on that corner. I promise you that. It needs to be a school.
And Matthias, just so you know, we're gonna, like I said, post this slide deck up on the website for y'all, but this was the numbers of units, the anticipated new builds, the ones that are already in the works or that are known, and the amount of anticipated students that would be generated out of the estimated amount. And just so y'all know, when we estimated the capacity and the enrollment, it took into account these numbers. So this is not on top of, but it take into account. Okay, so I know I told Ms. Bradley she would be next, and then I will select someone from Blackshear. Sir, so we've been trying to also allow people who just are general community members, so we don't necessarily dictate. We're gonna make enough time for everybody, so we're gonna go ahead and continue. We're gonna make sure that everyone gets the opportunity, all right?
I was brought up. I went to this old Keelan right here. I got educated. I've been advocating for kids in ASD for the last 30-something years, black and brown kids. This district has always taken advantage of the disadvantaged. You parents here, y'all can speak up for y'all kids. But a lot of these failing schools that are failing, their parents didn't get educated in the school district. They don't know how to advocate like you parents know how to advocate. They don't know how to go into school. They don't know how to go to the website, TA website, to see if their children's teachers are certified or not. You have elementary schools that had 10 or 15 long-term subs in their schools. The parents don't know that. Somebody have to advocate for those schools east of I-35. I've been doing that. So when you want to talk about failing schools, the reason these schools are failing, because majority of the schools east of I-35 have always been training camps for teachers. So I just want everybody to understand, I have a niece right now. All children can learn with the proper guidance, but you got to have people standing in front of those kids that know how to relate to these kids that are in these communities. If you don't do that, none of our black and brown kids will ever be educated. Because if you don't not used to our culture and know how to deal with some of these kids, they get labeled with behavior problems. That's why we still have the school to pipeline to prison. And I'm just speaking to everyone, and I hear some parents, but some of you all, I don't care about your kids going to Blackshear. I don't care if you don't want the kids to go to Oak Springs. It doesn't make me any difference. But I care about the kids that live in this community. Majority of you parents do not live in this community, in Blackshear or Oak Springs community. All we ask for is give our kids their new school, give them the same kind of teachers that they have at Barton Hills, Zilker, Maplewood. Give our kids the same type of teachers. Give our kids those same type of teachers. And I heard a lady speak, I heard what she speak. I'm about the disadvantaged children. That's what I'm about.
Actually, I see a lot of hands coming up. Actually, okay. Okay, first of all, I want to say thank you all for having this meeting. I did send a note to the school board trustee asking for another community meeting. The reason I did it is because a lot of the conversations had been going on about the consolidations. It got dropped on Blackshear. And I don't feel that Blackshear, the school, nor the community has had the opportunity to have the same conversations that other schools have had the opportunity to have, okay? One thing that I'm hearing, me personally, I believe that Oak Springs should have been a restart and the school should be completed. 2, I do not believe Blackshear should be closed for the simple reason that if you look across the street, you have an apartment complex right here. If you go down this street here, and I think that's Pennsylvania, New York, I always get those streets, but if you go down to Comal, you look to your left, there's an apartment complex right there. If you walk outside, you go right down the street here on Rosewood, look across the street, you see that massive complex. People are going to move in there. It's going to be families because it's the City of Austin Housing Authority that's building that complex. I asked this question earlier. Was it taken into consideration of that complex being built, the families that would move in? Were those families taken into consideration? I see Sammy here. There's also another complex that's going to be built on, I think it's Juniper and 11th? Juniper and 11th? And then there's going to be another complex that's going to be built on 8th Street. All of this is affordable housing. Families will be moving in there. Blackshear is going to be needed. Was that taken into consideration? Did anyone even talk to
yes.
Michael Gerber?
So, Cheryl, Ms. Bradley, forever trustee Bradley. Yes, I mean, that's how this process works. You know, we actually just shared the different developments that were captured in the plan. You list them there. If there are others, we're happy to explore them. They are there. We met with the developer, we pulled information in. Here's the thing. Most people believe that a certain type of unit yields more students than it actually does.
No, Matthias, I'm not even saying that.
No, but
because I know the conversation didn't happen with the City of Austin Housing Authority. Michael Gerber.
I meet with Michael Gerber. I would not meet with Michael Gerber to begin with. I would go to where the development is, the number of units.
Well, I know you wouldn't, but you had people
we met with the developers.
So I would expect them to have done that. But I know that did not get done. So, but then the other thing is that the parent who spoke about focusing on students, because bricks and mortar do not teach. You have to have the right individuals, as Ms. Miller says, in those schools, and you know it. When you speak of funding being intentional, the supports being intentional, I don't believe that a principal walk into a school that they have the leadership authority of and it not be intentional. I do not believe teachers go and stand in front of their students and it not be intentional. It's always intentional, but what I need you to understand is what is the intention of the district for our community? And I do mean East Austin, Blackshear, Oak Springs. What is the intention? Because basically you already know what you want to do. And so you can't gaslight me. I've been in this district far too long for that.
I've known you for a long, long time.
But wait, hold on.
So, but to be clear, you were the one who helped introduce this idea, to be clear.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
That's it too. Did you actually have a conversation with Sterling Lands? Because I was in that meeting.
We were
in
together.
fact, I helped to organize the meeting he's speaking of. One person came to the mic and made the statement, and that was a teacher, if I'm not mistaken, of Oak Springs. It was
So-
only one person, and now all of a sudden, this meeting
There are
takes
lo-
ownership.
there are lots of
You
people.
have called Sterling Land's name out every time
I was
you
at the
stand
church.
up.
Yeah.
I know you were at the church,
Yep.
but you make it like it was his idea.
Oh, no, no, no.
When only one person came to the mic and
There's
stated
more than
it.
one.
You took it and you ran away with it, and I'm not mad at you about
I don't.
that.
I don't run away with things. I have a lot of.
Well, no, I'm
just to be
not
clear.
mad. I'm not mad at you
Yeah.
about that because
I'm
you
sorry.
are the superintendent. But one thing that, and I do need everybody to understand this, the enrollment of AISD is dropping. And you know it is. Even when they started planning this bond, the enrollment was going down. It wasn't increasing, it was still going down. But was that taken into consideration? Promises were made, and we expect a return on our investment. That's all I'm saying. That's it. So if you promised it, do it. If you can't do it, state the reason why. Make it plain and clear. And I like your question because you're right. You make it plain and clear. We're looking at closing 2 schools and opening up 1. Same thing with Sims and Norman. 2 schools closed, you opened up 1. The one thing about East Austin is we lose our legacy. We lose our history. And then you want to say we can bring Blackshear back as an early education center because that's what's done at Pease. But that wasn't done overnight, and you know it took, what, 4 to 5 years?
So to be clear, I could have gone a lot faster if there was some, I'm really honest with you. We go back. That could have gotten done much quicker than it actually did because of the time between when the vote took place, the pandemic, and the sensitivity around repurposing that school as quickly as when the school was closed. That's just the honest truth. So yes, I think we could go faster. That's why it took that long. 2019, pandemic, nothing was happening for 2.5 years. So that contributed to that time.
Okay, well, what I'm going to ask you is to take into consideration the community around the 2 schools that we're speaking of, okay? Take into consideration the historical value of what we're talking about. If you're going to say it, do it. It's intentional. Make sure it's intentional. Make sure that there is a strong academic program no matter what you do, so that the supports are there. Because that has been one thing that has been a fight in this district. It is a district that has institutionalized racism. No matter who the superintendent is and who they think they may be able to fight to stop that, but there is institutional racism. The gentleman was correct. So, whatever it is you're going to do, make it intentional, but ensure that the Blackshear community, and I live in this community, I attended Blackshear, and of course it didn't look like it does right now. I attended Keeling right here. I also attended Oak Springs as well. So I attended this school. I actually have a vested interest in this. Anytime I vote for what's going to be in the best interest of children, not adults. Because as an adult, we already have it. We have to ensure that our children can attain it. And we look to you to be able to do that, okay? And you did inherit a mess. I will agree with you on that. You did inherit a mess. But it's what you do with that mess right now that helps us to trust you.
Yes. So this woman here is a Blackshear alumni. She's going to go next, and you've had your head up almost as long as she has, and I'll be over there.
Thank you so much. Thank you. My name is Arlene Youngblood, and I am an alum of Blackshear Elementary School. And my buddy, Regina Temple Grimes, we were in nursery school at Ebenezer Nursery School on 1010 East 10th Street through 5th grade at Blackshear, okay? We had teachers that pushed us to excel. And my white babies that I see at Carver Library when they get out of school, they are coming over to Carver from Blackshear Elementary School and Fine Arts Academy. Parents make sure that they're able to transfer their babies to come all the way to the east side to benefit from the excellence at Blackshear. And I'm so proud to see y'all here to advocate for your children, okay? I'm also proud of those black parents who are able to come. Some, they're not able to come because they're working. They have responsibilities. But I need you to understand, Blackshear is an important part of East Austin. 1891, Gregorytown, part of the Freedmen colonies. The school has a historical marker at the old administration building. So I want you to take time and go look. Mr. Rice, who was there when I was little, they were popping behinds back then, the Board of Education, okay? Mr. Rice instituted the free lunch program that AISD, prior to under segregation, Austin Public Schools. He introduced a free lunch program so that the white schools could also start feeding their babies. He got that program started at Blackshear during segregation. So I want you to understand, these schools are important. The children have a place to go. They're getting excellence at both schools. Okay, I'm advocating for Oak Springs too. All these schools are very important. They were established during segregation. And our white babies are benefiting from what happened at these schools because their parents need a school for their babies to go to also. The students at Houston-Tillotson, they do their student teaching over at Blackshear. Where are they going to go? They go right across the street. If they don't have a car, they go practice their student teaching for their education degree. Where are they going to go? You have Holy Cross Church down the street. You have Mount Olive Baptist Church. So that is a community. When you break up something, it dies. And that's what happens during gentrification. Erase something so that we can start over and build some condos. We need to keep what's important to our community. I do thank you. You're dealing with a big mess because nobody wanted to deal with the mess. And so here you are. You'll probably have some gray hair next 2 years, okay? But thank you so much for the opportunity. We need to stand up, like the lady has mentioned, for our children. They are the beneficiaries. When children of all colors, black, white, brown, Asian, red, yellow, can come together, make friends, go to high school, go to college, work with each other in corporate America, public sector, whatever it is, they need to get to know each other, okay? These are gonna be their friends. Some of them are gonna be marrying each other. Get ready, okay? Come on. They need opportunities. You can't live in a vacuum. But thank you so much. And y'all go over to Blackshear. They got the historical marker. And I think there's a get-together, the anniversary of the school, Friday, 5 to 7 on Friday the 13th. Please come. Even if your kids go to Oak Springs, come on over to. Bye. Thank you.
Come over here. And we are at the end of our scheduled time, but how many show of hands of people were really still hoping that they could speak? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think we can commit to 6. You made it just in time. All right. Go right ahead.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I have 2 kids at Blackshear. We've lived in Blackshear zone, walking to school for 14 years. The kids have been here since 2001. So 4th grader and a 2nd grader. So Blackshear's been really awesome. I appreciate all the comments here tonight. I think that the comments about our location, I'm really happy that was brought up because Blackshear has been able to have success. And that success is built on our amazing principal, our amazing teachers, our amazing families, and all of, our location is tied up in all of that. And I feel like that hasn't been enough of this conversation. Because when I look at the hard decision to be made, it started, I feel like, with the district-wide consolidation discussion of, and while I personally am like interested in the short term, I'm really trying to put myself into y'all's shoes, thinking about the long term. How can our neighborhood school that serves all of our families be successful long term? And I think, you know, the restart plan didn't happen at Oak Springs, and the plan was, let's build on the success at Blackshear. Let's open up and be a bigger, stronger school together, and build on that success that we've had. And so what I'm really worried about is that if we remove Blackshear's community from its location, that success will be much harder. Those partnerships with teachers from Houston-Tillotson, we talked about the academics, right? That's the promise that matters the most, is giving our kids the education that they need and they deserve. And it's hard to get those teachers to teach at our East Side schools. And having that pipeline to Houston-Tillotson has helped Blackshear stay staffed, have amazing people, where I understand, I was horrified to hear about the staffing shortages at our neighbor school. So I do think that's part of my view, is not only the short-term transition, which I think is very dangerous to try to create more instability at a time when we have a big challenge ahead of us, but also the long term of, you know, what is going to be a school that will attract the teachers and the staff and the families who are engaged. And you're right, like, some of us in this room have more privilege than others to advocate for our kids. And I think that that's one of Blackshear's strengths, is it has attracted parents that invest in our school and in our community, and hopefully advocate for all of us. They're all our kids, right? So what strikes me about this discussion, I hear the timing has to be done now because of construction contracts and, like, when can we move into the new school. The idea of delaying a year actually seems good to me from the perspective of, like, let's get through the tap. Let's focus on one thing at a time. And so I would really like this conversation to be part of the district-wide discussion, because we know there were at least 3 more schools to close. If you build another one, that's 4 more schools to close. And because you didn't put a Montessori at Go Valley and you didn't make Sanchez a dedicated ESL school, that means that we have Zavala under-enrolled, Campbell under-enrolled, you know, and so there's, all of these things are related to each other. And I would really, I feel like I think I would just have so much more confidence in this decision about what's the best location long-term for our school if it was part of the holistic discussion. And I really respect all the work that y'all have done on that. It was really hard. I was really hopeful it would happen all at once, because this is more painful and the uncertainty is driving people away from the district and all that. But I think the having it as part of that holistic discussion would help us all look at the map and say, okay, that makes sense, right? If you closed Go Valley as a neighborhood school, Oak Springs location makes a ton more sense, but Go Valley's right near it. You know, there's all these moving parts. So I've taken too much time. I appreciate everyone.
No, I want to, thank you. So I know we're going to hand off to another, the gentleman, I think he needs to answer his question. But just a quick timing issue. So I have contemplated whether we should move this into a longer discussion. The reality, and this is, again, it's a function of time, right? Escalation in this market, you know, it's real, we manage it. It's something that can be anywhere from 8 to 12.5%, in some years 14%. And so with the remaining funds we have now, if we don't execute a GMP, then the ultimate budget 1 year after will actually exceed our remaining available dollars, right? So that's one of the things that I'm really trying to navigate. So there's a window of time where I have enough money allocated right now to actually complete the project. If I wait a whole year, I mean, just apply 8% to $60 million, $55 million, you know, a year and a half, depending on when it's anchored, you know, you could see $7-8 million bust. And that ends up being pretty substantial given how tight the overall bond program is. And so that's one of the things that I'm also wanting to communicate to you all that we're having to navigate, because that's the reality. If the money isn't there, then it becomes a different question. Well, where's that money going to come from? It has to come from another project. Well, most projects, we don't know that we have surplus funds until they're further along in their construction project process and down towards the end of it, and then we'll sweep those dollars and invest back into the infrastructure. So that's why right now is something that we wanted to really explore, and why, you know, that timeline wouldn't necessarily work without creating other issues. But just wanted to share that. Sorry, long-winded.
I'm gonna go over here.
Yeah, thank you. Jude Leonard. I live around the corner. I have a kid who's going to one of these schools. Apparently, I'm very opposed to a merger, as you may have heard. Happy to find out so much of the history that I'm now a part of, which is really cool. I think that we should keep both schools open. You know, finish what you started, do what you say you're going to do. I mean, that's what we're taught from elementary school, right? I very much disagree that a merger is beneficial to kids. You know, there's attachment theory, there's national school standards that show disruption decreases attendance, you know, reading level, mathematics, everything. You know, Erickson, psychosocial development. You know, there's plenty of research to prove that, you know, forcing kids into one school and then moving to another over time is actually bad for them. Enrollment is not the only metric of success, maybe for the district, but not for parents and kids. My wife, she taught at Dobie Middle School. She taught at Belichick, and the staffing at Dobie was terrible. The teacher to student ratio just led to poor outcomes time and time again. And she was teacher of the year, actually. She was teacher of the year one year, and you know, it crushed her. So, you know, she did her best. I think we're in one of the highest density areas outside of downtown. Closing a school and making more kids go to the same school is a task that's gonna, you know, it's gonna have repercussions for our families and for the kids also. So, you know, I support Oak Springs and I support Blackshear, but I definitely support both, because you know, student to teaching ratio is very important, and having access to history is going to be important for, you know, generations.
Thank you.
And I just want to be really clear, the merger of the schools has already been decided. Like, that's not something that I have the authority to change. It's now just a function of the location of the school. And so I didn't want anybody to leave here thinking that was something that could come back around. I don't expect that would come back around. But I appreciate your comments, sir.
Hi, my name's Patrick. I've got a couple kids at Blackshear. I've appreciated the discussion and learned about everything. I'm going to sit down. I got a bad leg here. So my question is for you, actually. I've heard that it's a decision that we are making. It seems like it's your decision. Can you clarify that?
Yeah, so like in all things. So yes, I am the decision maker, right? I try very, very hard to get input from the entire community whenever we make difficult decisions. And I would say that if you looked at the history of the decisions we've made, we have pivoted and adjusted when appropriate to include community input. But there are just some things that I cannot change, or some things that I'm just not going to move away from. This is one of those areas where, because of where we were in the process, how we arrived at that time in, you know, November 20th, there's kind of flexibility to explore this, but there's a finite period of time. We cannot explore it for years and years and years. It really needs to be, okay, the merger was coming together, that was already decided by the board, we have an opportunity to explore this, I made a commitment to do so, and that's why we're here today. But yeah, it is my decision to make, but I never make a decision in isolation.
And do you have experience ever working in Blackshear?
Do I have experience working in Blackshear? I have
Or supporting Blackshear directly, just curious.
Supporting, I mean, in my current role, my previous role? I've spent time at Blackshear. There have been lots of times where the principal and I have had conversations about supports the campus has needed. Yeah, I'm very familiar with Blackshear.
Okay, and then about Oak Springs?
Same.
Have you spent equal time, or have you?
So is this what this is about? You want to
No, I'm just trying to understand.
Do you want to know out of the 116 schools how many minutes I've spent at each school? I mean, I'm wanting to understand.
We've got 2 schools in question. I'm just looking for a little clarity
but
here. So.
the line of questioning is very like, I don't understand what you're trying to arrive at. Ask our principals if I engage. Ask the community if I've been present. Ask anybody here who's seen the work that we've done. I remain as present as I possibly can, and more so than any superintendent has before. It's impossible for me to be at every school and spend the same amount of time at every school, but I try hard to do so.
You can tell there's a lot of very committed people in here. I think what we want is like a fair, just way to move the process forward that's going to put everybody, all of the kids, in the best position to move forward. And I think I would wonder if you'd maybe consider an alternative way to make a decision.
A vote.
Is that something you consider?
No. I would not consider a vote, and the reason being is because it's clear that every community shows up in different ways to participate in those votes. And if you think that's not true, then I can show you hundreds of surveys that have been done in Austin. It wouldn't happen that way. It just wouldn't be really fair. I mean, I hope you understand why that wouldn't be fair.
It feels like a very rushed process. So if nothing else, a little bit more time to consider and go through a proper process seems reasonable, right?
I think timeline and process is something we can be considered. I just want to be really clear about what the exchange is, right? And when we were talking about the increased cost, that is real, right? That is something we would have to contend with and work through, right? Because that would have to mean that I would have to commit more dollars from somewhere, from some other school, in order to make this school whole, whatever we decided to do.
Speaking solely for myself, we're in it for the long haul. So if I need to go campaign for a bond, I'm ready to do it. So,
yeah,
thank you.
I appreciate
Get your
that.
name and contact information
Yeah.
for next time. Where are we? All right. We're going to go talk about money.
All right.
Oh, that's my neighbor. That's my neighbor right there. So I want to say, like, our kids go to birthday parties together. I know his parents, his cousins just moved in. We are a community, whether we may not know each other that well, but we're going to be a bigger and better community together. But I'd like to talk about money. So in 2017, Cassis, a 1951 school, got a $35.2 million bond to completely modernize their campus. And I'd like to see the numbers for what that would look like for Blackshear. You came in here and you told us that there's not enough money for that, and I haven't seen those numbers. Second, you said there is enough, I'm sorry, I'm not done. You said that there is enough for what we need to do at Oak Springs, but that doesn't include the redesign that actually accommodates our students. That's all.
So the first question, so Cassis, very different market, right? So that was funded in 2017 bond program. On a dollar per square foot basis, we're almost like 2 times what that was. That's just market conditions. I have all that information, and we share it on our CBOC website. It's all there, and we can summarize it so you can see what the cost per square foot is now. It is ridiculous how expensive these buildings have become. So Cassis, we were able to build at a much different rate, and honestly, there are schools that are being built now that are very different on the cost per square foot basis than schools that are being built at the end of the bond program. That is how fluid how hot this market is and how much it impacts our budgets. Secondly, when it comes to Blackshear, like how far dollars could go, right? Because that's kind of the question that you're asking. The redesign, when we think about a redesign, I think about the things that are easier to manipulate given where we are in the process. Right, so the design is set, the permits have been approved, the GMP has been set as well, right? So there are, I would almost, so here's, in what way? Because our education specifications would require that every space is very, very similar. The configuration of those spaces is what the community weighs in on. So yes, there are limitations on how the relationship from space to space would occur. Like that is set. That is a true, I'm agreeing with you. That is true. Are there opportunities to refine what currently exists within the existing footprint? Yes, with some exceptions. Like I can't move the kitchen. I can't move certain things, but there are other elements that can move.
Matthias, you used an acronym, I'm right here. You used an acronym G, could you clarify that one?
It's a guaranteed maximum price.
There you go.
It is the price that we set and our general contractor agrees to. No, it's what I agree to, that I will pay you this money to deliver this school, period. And we set that early in the process, and they secure the bids, and that's how we kind of get to a point where we have certainty in the budget. So there are opportunities to refine the design, but it's not a redesign, because a redesign would require more permits. It would require really a change in timeline, right? I'm using the timeline that's currently existing with changes that we can manage within the existing timeline. Does that make sense? Like if I move a kitchen, that is a 18-month change. The City of Austin permit. So what I would say is the projected enrollment of both campuses, right, can be accommodated in Oak Springs 2 years from now. Like you're not leaving tomorrow, right? We're not leaving the year after that. You're not leaving in the year after that. So really what we're trying to do is say, when we think about the reside, right, because we talk about neighborhood schools, we're serving students that reside in the neighborhood. We want to welcome families from everywhere else where we have space, but we design for the reside. The reside fits, without a doubt. And so I think that's one of the things that keeps coming up. I'm happy to provide more details on it, and we can send the slides out that show the breakdown. But that's why when we think about spaces, what's fixed are where our buildings are and where our students live. And that's how we have to plan.
All right, this gentleman here has had his hand patiently
he has
up
had his hand up for a while.
quite some time. And y'all, it is getting pretty late, and so I'm gonna ask, unless you have a comment that you feel that really truly has not been touched upon, I'm gonna try to get us to wrap up.
Hi, yes. So mine's actually a pretty good follow-up to that last question. So Blackshear's Fine Arts program has attracted a lot of transfers. And so what I heard is that the smaller capacity of a modernized campus at Oak Springs would limit the number of transfers available, and thus limiting the availability of fine arts elementary programs for AISD students. Is there a consideration of keeping Blackshear open as a non-zoned fine arts campus?
So the first thing is, the fine arts program was introduced, right, in a way to create programming that attracts families from outside the area, right? I think there's consensus. I understand that. I understand the history. That's why it was designed. We don't design programs for transfer students. We design schools for the community that resides in, and then if there's space, we welcome transfer students in, right? That's why middle schools and high schools, we have lots of movement in our high schools, but we don't set capacities based on that movement, because things can change, and we see it change all the time, where a principal will turn over and then we'll see 100 students move within a high school. And so we just can't design to transfers. But whenever we have capacity, we absolutely welcome our families in. Now, is there an opportunity, like forward thinking, to keep Blackshear open? Then that would mean that I'm foregoing building Oak Springs. That's just the honest exchange, because right now, the board has already agreed to combine both schools. So I'd either have to make it, to your point, unenrolled or open campus throughout the entire district, which there are challenges with that. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it wouldn't happen in this timeline. It would require the academic framework and vision work to occur in the spring, the boundary work that's going to occur in the summer and into the fall, and then at some point after that, we'd revisit it. So that's how it would have to work.
I just would say that you would be killing the magic that's making Blackshear work, which is this fine arts program that is attracting a lot of transfers. That's what's leading to a lot of the success, and I think you would be cutting that at the knees.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things that we have to really understand is the impact of the change. And here's the thing, is that programs move. I mean, I know you don't want to hear that, I know, but when you look at the history of Austin ISD, there are so many programs that have budded and grown. Something happens, and then it moves along, and then something else comes in, and something else comes in. We've been pretty clear, at least I've tried to be clear, that we want to ensure that we have incredibly strong neighborhood schools and supplement with programs. Would we ever make a decision the other way around? I think the only way that you're going to see that if it's a district-wide, like comprehensive school that would include transportation. It would have to include a lot, right, to have it be viewed and supported in that way. It's not impossible. I just am sharing with you kind of the constraints. But you're exactly right. I mean, there will be an impact. And I will say that the only way that we can even begin to mitigate that is to begin to plan. Like that's the honest truth. You just got to plan. And we have seen schools come together. We've seen programs change. It does happen. And so that's why for me, clarity is helpful, and I want to give that clarity. I know that I've heard rushed, but clarity is kind in many ways, because what I want to avoid is this dragging out for another year and a half, not being able to complete Oak Springs, not giving your families any clarity, and then not having any money to do either. Like, that is a real possibility if we wait too long. And so that's just something else I'm grappling with, right?
Okay, I'm going to make this be our last comment, and this person I just have to acknowledge brought tea for everyone tonight, y'all. I just want to acknowledge that. That's an incredible thing.
Well, I don't think this has been touched on, but except for the part about we need resources in the buildings for the children to be successful. I wanted to say that I'm new to the East Side. I've been here for 20 years. I had the opportunity to get to know some of my neighbors and really see what the kinship, what the community, it was a fraction of what it was, but I got the chance to get to know some of the elders, and I really appreciate the chance to talk to people like this. Like, I thank you all for making this possible, and everybody really sharing and listening together, because I think that's part of the piece that is missing from how we become a real community in Austin. How do we right some of the wrongs? I value what Ms. Arlene was saying about my kids getting to know other types of kids, my kids and other kids having to work it out. That's the future. That's what we need. And they're showing us the way, right? We're more afraid. So we need resources in this new school, especially with the divides that have been, we needed the time to talk about it, but it's the divides that have been here over generations are still here, and we need facilitation. We need resources to support the communities coming together. I remember Mr. Sherwin leading and participating in the healing circles at 12th and Chicone. I think that we need that kind of ability to talk to each other in a school community, in a safe place, in a neutral place, to be able to really support all the kids. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And this gentleman up here is rather convincing, and he convinced me to let him have one more word.
So I think we have two stories that's going on here. So when we look at both schools, we want both of them to stay open. I agree with Ms. Bradley that both schools should stay open. However, where we are right now at this juncture is that there has to be a decision made, because really we're forced into that decision. I don't like it, and I don't like the fact that we have to make that decision. So as someone who is a part of this community that lives in the Blackshear area, has been there for 55 years, there's a few people in the room that beat me, which is Mrs. Bradley and a few others. I understand what it means when you have people who don't have the same options as the folks that are in this room, including myself. Because I'm looking at the demographics, the representation that's in the room, and even with the Blackshear community, I don't see a lot of representation from people that look like me, that are disproportionately impacted by every negative indicator. And so when I look over at Oak Springs, although I live in the Blackshear community, then it forces me to step outside of what I really desire, because I grew up in the Blackshear community. My mother taught at Blackshear. I have a vested interest in the Blackshear community. But I have more of an interest in the people who are disproportionately impacted by the decisions that we make. And so when I come to that conclusion that I have to advocate for the kids rather than for my own convenience, then I do that. And so if we look around the room, when we first came in, just think about it. We had a lot of people that were from the Oak Springs part of the community in the room, and the room has shifted because they had to go home, because there were other kids that they left at the house that were taking care of themselves. They're not afforded the same opportunity to sit here until 9 o'clock tonight and have this conversation. So they had to come in and they had to leave. And so the reason why I'm staying to the end, because I really want to go home, y'all. I want to go home like, they said that this was going to end at 8. I wanted to go at 8. But I had a responsibility to stay to the end so I can make sure that the voices that had to leave the room are heard in the room. So going back to what Jana was saying, I'm all about restorative justice. Restorative justice is about making things right when you see things that are wrong. It's about listening to the voices of everybody who's a part of this conversation. My question for us in the room is, have we actually listened? Because we had young people who stood up here who have not been afforded the same options as some of the people who are in this room, who said, I just want my school. And they deserve it. And that Fine Arts Academy that you're talking about, that Fine Arts Academy should be at this new building as well. It should be there. Now, Superintendent, we should not be having to close the school, but I don't think that you have any options right now except for to make that decision. One school has to close and there has to be a consolidation, and I believe that consolidation has to happen. If that decision has to be the decision, Oak Springs. And so I would just encourage everybody at the end of this night to go home and not only consider your own child that's with you, but consider the children who do not have the same options or the same access as you do, including myself. And then we make a decision from there.
Okay. So I've promised many times that we'll get this posted. We also, if you gave us your email, we're happy to send this out tomorrow via email along with that engagement report. They're both available English, Spanish. But just wanted to go through a few next steps. So we are committing to come back to y'all with a decision no later than the end of this month. You might have seen on one of the previous slides, we need a decision if we're gonna make that timeline. I believe we were told that it's gotta be decided by March, so we're trying to get ahead of that. Just as a reminder, general enrollment and transfers are gonna open February 16th, so that round 1 enrollment just ended last Friday. We're gonna have the general transfers and general enrollment opening on the 16th. General transfers are the 16th through the 10th. The enrollment system will close for 3 days and then reopen back up for that general. As far as staffing for the campuses, so we just had a match fair February 7th. How many offers did we send out to staff? Do you remember? 140, I think, something? More than that, of staff who were able to find a home, folks that were displaced because of the consolidation process. The next one of those happens March 7th, and then the staffing offers and placements will be happening March 23rd through April 10th. So just giving you kind of a glimpse at the timeline of how we're trying to find homes for staff that may have been displaced through the consolidation process. So with that, like I said, you will hear back from us no later than the end of this week. We'll aim for tomorrow, but I'm not going to promise that on my team. And then, of course, as a reminder, that Blackshear anniversary, the 135th anniversary, that's this Friday, 5 to 7. So hopefully, maybe we'll all see each other there again. So everyone have a wonderful evening. Thank you.